Is This Thing On? Is directed by Bradley Cooper, written by Bradley Cooper, Will Arnett, and Mark Chappell, based on a story by Arnett, Chappell, and John Bishop. As their marriage quietly unravels, Alex faces middle age and an impending divorce, seeking new purpose in the New York comedy scene, while Tess confronts the sacrifices she made for their family, forcing them to navigate co-parenting, identity, and whether love can take a new form. This is a movie I was looking forward to. I'm a bit hot and cold on Bradley Cooper as a director, but I think he's very talented, and I still have a lot of time for him. And, the movie just went wide recently. I finally got a chance to see it. And while I definitely do have some reservations about this movie, I ultimately really enjoyed it, and I thought there was a lot of good stuff going on here. And I think the kind of main story with this movie is the two lead performances from Will Arnett and Laura Dern. They have really fantastic chemistry together, first of all. You really buy them as this married couple in kind of a time of turmoil. Their back and forth are really interesting. Their arguments are really well done. Their happy moments are really well done. And that's because these two actors are so good. I saw a poll quote for this movie that said Laura Dern was a revelation. And I thought, no, Laura Dern was a revelation in 1990. She's been great for 30 years. And that continues in this movie. She is just fantastic, and you just really buy her as a normal person. And same thing with Will Arnett. I think this is really good casting. And as I mentioned, I was really looking forward to seeing Will Arnett in this role, and if there is a revelation here, it's Will Arnett. Not because his talent is a surprise, but because we've never gotten to see him do a dramatic leading man performance in a movie before. And I thought he absolutely killed it. I thought he was really funny, really believable as this person. He was able to capture all the sadness and the heartbreak and the anger, and just, I found him to be very authentic and very believable as this guy kind of going through a time of turmoil, not losing his mind, just having a difficult time and dealing with it through comedy. And that was something I really liked too, is these stand-up scenes, and Arnett really shines in these scenes. They're kind of designed as a showcase for him. And, there is kind of a funny element to his performance where, it kind of feels like his character gets a little too good at stand-up a little too quickly, because while that is part of the arc, at a certain point, Will Arnett's, natural comedic talent just shines through in a big way. But honestly, it didn't bother me much because I was just so entertained by him. And I thought they did a pretty good job of giving him jokes that were relatively believable for a guy who just started doing stand-up and had no experience. Maybe a little too quick, a little too good, but it didn't bother me too much. And these club scenes are where Matthew Libatique's cinematography and honestly the writing really shine. Some of the jokes and the stand-up scenes genuinely had me laughing quite a bit. And I really loved the way these scenes were presented, kind of grimy club settings. You really feel like you're in the room, except for when the camera is 2 inches away from the actor's face. And that is something that's been talked about a lot with this movie, is Bradley Cooper's directorial style. Honestly, I mostly was fine with it. But there are definitely points where I was like, wow, okay, we're really close to Will Arnett's face. Or, alright, that actor said something, and now we have to watch the camera float over to the other person. So it did bother me at points, but I mostly really liked his directorial style. I really enjoyed the scenes around the stand-up sequences as well, where you kind of see the behind the scenes of it. The other comedians hanging out, Arnett talking with all of them, talking to the MC. It's a very cool peek behind the curtain into the working of a world that I'm very unfamiliar with. Beyond that, a cameo I did find really funny is Peyton Manning not playing himself. He's playing a character called Laird. And I've been seeing people online who are very upset about this cameo. And I'm like, just have some fun, man. It's really funny that he's just in it. I think it's hilarious. I really enjoyed it. What can I say? Beyond him, you've got a solid supporting cast. You have Andra as kind of a more principal supporting character. Again, just plays her role really well. There's kind of a strange scene where her and other characters sing Amazing Grace while making breakfast. You can kind of tell Bradley Cooper really just wanted an excuse for Andra to sing, but she was good all the same. And I was largely a big fan of Ciarin Hinds and Christine Ebersole as Alex's parents. They have some really funny line deliveries, and Ciarin Hinds gets a good showcase scene with Will Arnett near the end. I did think those characters were maybe a little bit too wacky to the point of being a bit insufferable, but I didn't mind it too much. If there is a highlight in the supporting cast, though, it's absolutely Bradley Cooper as Balls. He had me dying, laughing so hard. And he's playing this sort of struggling, wannabe famous actor, and having that be Bradley Cooper added an extra layer to it. He basically shows up every 30 minutes to be the funniest person in the movie, and I was totally delighted by him. Like, truly dying laughing in all of his scenes. And, you know, I did have all those positives, but I said I had some negatives, and I think most of those kind of come through in the writing, and one element in particular is kind of the transition between phases of the movie. I feel like when it's shifting from kind of one phase of the movie to the next, it kind of does it a bit quickly and a bit awkwardly, and it feels a bit underbaked. You know, Alex deciding to do stand-up, I would have just liked to see another, 15 seconds of him deliberating there. I think that would have been more believable. And then kind of the various stages that Alex and Tess's relationship go through in this movie. I think, you know, the shift happens a bit quickly. Once you're in that phase with them, I thought it was largely very good and I enjoyed being in that space. But, you know, I was a bit bothered by that. And I will say, the final scene of this movie, there's a very strange directorial decision made. There's a lot of camera time on characters that we have not met once in this movie, and not enough camera time on the characters who are really important to the scene. So it kind of undercut and distracted me from this final scene. The very last shot of the movie I was a big fan of. I really liked that last shot. But I think there was just kind of a weird decision here in this final scene with the coverage on the actors. I think if you see the movie, you'll know what I mean. But yeah, that's generally what I think of Is This Thing On? You know, this is a movie that, while I did definitely have some problems with it, and, you know, it didn't light me on fire, there was still a lot in here that I really liked. Will Arnett and Laura Dern, I think, are really fantastic. Bradley Cooper giving a very, very funny supporting performance, while also giving a pretty interesting visual style here. Even if it doesn't always work for me, I did enjoy kind of what he was going for. There's some really funny writing here, a lot of interesting stuff, you know, about the process of divorce, a lot of kind of memorable one-liners in that area that, you know, I'm sure would land a lot more with someone who had been divorced or is in the kind of life stage of the characters in this movie. But it still did something for me, and I really enjoyed this movie. I think, you know, if there's a reason to see this movie, it's those stand-up scenes and Will Arnett's performance. It's really cool to get to see him have a dramatic showcase like this. So if you have any reason to believe you might like this movie, then I would definitely recommend Is This Thing On? It's not one of my favorites of the year or anything, but I think it's just a good time at the movies. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye!